Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. We know that the year 2020, the pandemic, was a banner year, was a bumper year, was a blockbuster year for the richest amongst us. Individuals got richer. In fact, the top 1% of our fellow Americans, the richest of the rich, saw their wealth increase by $4 trillion. Yes, you heard that right, $4 trillion in the year 2020. On the other hand, individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality, they saw their industries decimated. Many lost their jobs forever. 40 million of our fellow Americans were on unemployment at some point or another in the year 2020. The $1,400 stimulus checks that go out to 85% of American households cost $400 billion out of the $1.9 trillion. Now, if $400 billion is needed to send out $1,400 stimulus checks once, what would $4 trillion do? That would allow $1,400 stimulus checks to go out 10 times to 85% of American households. In fact, here's a brand new article that was published by Bloomberg, the wealth gains that made 2020 a banner year, a blockbuster year for the richest 1%. The top group, like I mentioned, added $4 trillion, more than a third of new wealth. In other words, they substantially increased their net worth, and Americans without college degrees saw their wealth shrink during the pandemic. So fundamentally, the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. Now, let's take a look at the first chart from this Bloomberg article. By the way, I'll provide you with a link in the description section below to this excellent article, so make sure you check it out. Let's take a look at the first chart. A very good year for the wealthiest amongst us. So the wealthiest Americans essentially saw their wealth increase substantially and essentially had the majority of the benefit of the economic recovery. You can see the top 1% saw their wealth increase by $4 trillion. Their wealth increased by 35%. The bottom 50% saw their wealth increase by $470 billion. They did see their wealth increase by 4.1%. But what this graph does not show you is that the poorest amongst us actually saw their wealth decrease because these individuals were more dependent on stimulus checks, more dependent on unemployment benefits, and did not have savings, and they saw their savings completely eliminated as a direct result of the pandemic. Now, if you're in the bottom 50%, but you're not at the very bottom portion of that 50%, you may have a higher savings rate, but you had nowhere near the benefit that the richest amongst us had. And as you can see, the top 1% saw their wealth increase by $4 trillion, a 35% increase in their wealth in 1 year. And in case you're wondering, how is that possible? That's because of huge gains in the stock market. That's because of substantial increases in the value of real estate and all the properties that they owned. Now, here's a very interesting image. And as we analyze this image and as we move through different parts of this image, you'll realize the wealth distribution for the richest amongst us. So you'll see the black portion correspond to the richest amongst us, the top 1%. The pink portion corresponds to those in the 90 to 99 percentile. In other words, the top 10%. Remember, the top 1% are substantially richer than the top 10%. So think of the pink portion as the top 10% and the black portion as the ultra elite, the top 1%. Now let's take a look at that portion in the middle where it says corporate equities and mutual fund shares. You'll see that the top 1% and the top 10%, the black portion, the pink portion, essentially own a majority of the stocks in the stock market. So when the stock market goes up, the top 1% represented in black on this chart, and the top 9%, in other words, from the second percentile to the 10th percentile. In other words, let's say you had 100 people, the richest person is represented in black, and people who are essentially number 2 through number 10, still part of the top 10 richest people, they are represented in pink. You'll see that the rich own substantially more real estate, they own substantially more stocks, they own substantially more private businesses. And if you look at the last portion that says other assets, they own substantially more in terms of other assets, different kind of assets, different kinds of partnerships, different kinds of essentially part ownerships in other businesses. And they have a multitude of assets that they can count on that appreciated during this pandemic. And here's another chart that shows you the 2020 shifts in wealth by income group. The top 1% saw their real estate equity jump 10 times faster than mortgage debt, along with massive gains in equity and private businesses. Basically, the stock market went up, the value of their businesses went up because a lot of people had businesses that continued to make money during the pandemic because a lot of these individuals had recession-proof businesses. They didn't own, a mom and pop ice cream shop. A lot of these individuals saw the value of their real estate go up, but their mortgage rates stayed the same or probably even came down as they refinanced because mortgage rates were at an all-time low. So if you owned a house, suddenly you're paying less on the house because you refinanced at a lower rate and the value of the house goes up, which effectively makes you much richer because it increases the value of your assets while reducing your monthly expenses, your monthly debt load in order to be able to service those assets. It's an unbelievable, it's almost like a Goldilocks period where the rich fundamentally got richer, and this potentially was a once in a generation opportunity for the rich to substantially increase their wealth. And if you thought that the wealth increase was isolated to the rich, I want you to think again. Individuals with higher levels of education actually saw their wealth increase relative to individuals who had less education. Here's a chart that shows you college gains. A vast majority of the net wealth gains went to households with a college degree. Those who had a college degree saw their wealth increase by $9.3 trillion, whereas those with some college or less saw their wealth increase by approximately 1/5 of that amount. As you can see, I really love charts because I'm a nerd. But folks, these charts definitely tell us a story. Here's another chart on your screen, also from this excellent Bloomberg article. Once again, I'll provide you with a link to the Bloomberg article in the description section below. Depending on your age, you're more likely to have a higher wealth gain as a direct result of the pandemic with the economic recovery. Americans under the age of 40, as you can see on your screen, hold just a 5.9% share of US household wealth. So you can see that Americans under the age of 40, represented in the black color, are at the bottom of this chart over the years, and this chart goes from 1989 all the way through to where we are now in early 2021. But if you take a look at the yellow portion, which represents Americans over the age of 70, and if you look at the pink portion that represents Americans in their 40s and early 50s, you'll see that this is starting to trend up. And if you look at Americans in their late 50s and 60s, you'll see that the proportion of wealthy Americans in that age group is actually declining, which is extremely interesting because this also tells us a story. This tells us that individuals above the age of 70 essentially started to accumulate more and more assets, and individuals, presumably these college educated individuals in their 40s and the 50s, also got richer and saw their wealth increase substantially as a result of this pandemic. And there's one thing, ironically, which was fairly consistent amongst all income earners, not just the top 1% or the top 10%, but even the bottom 50%. And that is the amount of savings and liquid assets. People had more money in the bank, presumably because we had nowhere to spend it. And we had this money, and individuals had the money, and essentially they saved it, waiting for the economy to reopen. Let's show you this chart on your screen that shows you the checkable deposits and currency holdings soar amidst the pandemic. Basically, it means people had more money in their personal checking accounts. By the way, in this chart, the top 1% is represented in a yellow font. So there's a slightly different color combination here. The blue portion represents individuals in the top 10 percentile, specifically the 90 to 99 percentile, with the richest amongst us being in yellow. You can start to see that not only was the yellow and blue portion more in recent times, if you look at the right side of your screen, but you can see that all the other colors, the pink color representing the 50th to the 90th percentile, and the black color representing the bottom 50% of income earners and wage earners, everything saw an increase because we fundamentally had more money saved up because we were not spending as much during the pandemic. This is going to impact the economic recovery. It's a K-shaped recovery. Individuals at the top of the K are doing better than everyone else. Individuals at the bottom of the K, individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality, have in many cases lost their jobs permanently. Individuals stuck in the cycle of poverty, which you can see on your screen right now, remain stuck, find it hard to escape this horrific cycle of poverty, while the richest amongst us have seen their wealth increase. The top 1% have seen their wealth increase by $4 trillion in 2020, a 35% increase in their net wealth in 1 year because the stock market went up, the value of their assets, the value of all their real estate, and the value of their businesses went up. Such is the unfair nature of the economic recovery. And this is why the rich have seen their wealth increase during a time when we had the most horrific health crisis and the most horrific economic crisis in many, many, many decades, potentially in a century, if you read certain news reports. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. I would appreciate it. My goal with the Ignition Time channel is to help you learn how to make money, how to save money, and how to invest money. My superpower is that I can make it rain money. Check that out. I want to make it rain money for you because, again, I want to teach you how to make money, how to save money, and invest money. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. Thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.